Howdy, you delicious people. I'm here today to review Intruders from 2011. So I think probably this movie had probably gotten remade and done a number of different ways and what have you, but also with a vague name like Intruders, which really it's only actually one intruder, but like even more reason for this movie to be very confusing. So for this film, the reason why I chose this movie to go on a review, and I'm sure a lot of people will be like, why did he choose this movie? Let's figure it out because like he just chooses these weird random things. I specifically chose this movie because I love films that remind me of like Darkness Falls or Boogeyman. And I love the movies where you have the kids that are just so desperately clinging to their bed sheets, afraid of the closet or the darkness at night, and they scream and they cry for the comfort of their parents uh, to just kind of get them through the night because they're having nightmares or they're just seeing things in the shadows or the weather is to just scare them that night. And so the parents are to run in and be like, how can I help my kid because that's how much I care. And those kinds of movies is stuff that I enjoy. Like it's just the weird um like element of that I always am to just uh like as I grow older to just love more and clutch to more. So, and if you guys have never gone on and seen Boogeyman or Darkness Falls, you need to see both those films. They are actually really surprisingly enjoyable and good. And so, what is Intruders about? So, Intruders is a story about two kids, Juan and Mia, that are trying to finish a story. And without the ability of finishing this story is to turn and haunt them. And that ends up giving us this hollow face character that is to try and uh, seemingly rip their faces off. And slowly but surely, we go on within this tale and have Juan, who is to be seeing this hollow face everywhere he is to go, and in desperate need of a priest to try and comfort him, and even that doesn't work. And so the only way that this kid is to figure out how to finish this story is to just get rid of it. And by accident, another kid ends up stumbling upon it. And that ends up being Mia. So Mia comes across this story, and her two wanting to finish it leads Mia into the comforting clutches of her father, John, who obviously is to state in the early parts of the story that, like, he is to be a dad that isn't really there for his daughter because, of course, he is to do this very challenging job. So he used to go on and make jokes about how he doesn't know how old Mia is or even what her name is because he forgets it. To really just state that this is a dad that isn't really there, but he so desperately wants to be. And him also being very out of touch as far as gift giving is to go is really also just kind of tell you like that this dad is just not really there, but he cares. So John wants to go on and comfort Mia and help her in the best way finish this story. And it almost gets to the point where it's seemingly left to John to figure this all out because it seems that he too is feeling afflicted by this hollow face in a way, to where people are going on and calling him crazy and saying that he's seeing things. So eventually, this movie is just entertaining enough. But also here are some problems with this film, and so on and so forth. So this movie is very thin. I'll admit that. As well as also a good chunk of this film is also done in a different language. The dialogue when you get to the subtitle scenes, are slow enough to where you can understand every bit of the story, as well as also at some point in Mia's story, Mia is left with writing things down because she loses the ability to talk. So if you're not reading enough in this movie, I'm sorry, but like I just wanted to go on and do a movie that just seemingly felt different than everything that I've been doing lately. And also, I wanted to do some kind of horror film. So, by the end of the tale, we come to find that there is some family secret that eventually is to be revealed by the end of this. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, okay. So, like, that's the whole reason for this whole hollow face character. Oh, okay. So, with that said, yeah, like, okay film. Just like if you have X number of minutes to just kill in your day, go out of your way to see Intruders. But logically, there's just some interesting visual stuff going on here in this movie also. Like the whole things of them consistently having people without faces at some point in this movie just kind of looks visually interesting to see at some points. Um, where we have Mia who's looking in the mirror without a face, and uh, John is saving this guy without a face, and so on. It's yeah. So yeah. So with that said, uh, it's just a movie to see. It's just another movie. Uh, I wish I could see more about this movie than that. So with that said, this movie, for when I was to have originally sought it out was such a long time ago, and then I just kind of left it in the cutting room floor to eventually do at some point. And then just today, I was reminded by this movie, and I was like, "Yeah, I never did this. I never reviewed it because there are some times where I accidentally re-reviewed something that I didn't realize I reviewed." And I'm like, "Well, I guess I just needed to delete that and just it sucks." Because I don't remember everything that I do. But then also I've re-reviewed things anyways stupidly more recently in a way. Um, But so, anyways, I think it's about that time to just go into full on spoilers. Um, but yeah, it's finally nice to actually have gotten this done. Because also there is so many other movies that I've left in just the cutter room floor of like, okay, I have this idea. Hopefully I'll get to it, and hopefully it'll do well, or hopefully it'll just be a thing I did one day. Because there are a lot of those too. So with that said, let's get into full on spoilers. It's going to spoil time, spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. So this review, I didn't bother to take minute to minute notes in this one. I am just going to wing it and try my best to remember everything that happens within this film and have a cast list with me and just blah, all of this out. Because without a doubt, logically, I would not have gone on and take the time to like full on do the minute to minute review. And then plus also I am freaking exhausted with doing those at some points with certain things that I've been doing lately. Um, so with that said, in the beginning of tale of this film, we have Juan, and so Juan is turning to his mother, Louisa, I believe, and he is wanting to finish this story about the hollow face man. And so Juan is talking to his mother, and so this story is to be that this hollow face man is with this tailor, and so Juan is asking his mother, it's like, well, how do I finish this story? And the mother ends up saying like, well, like how about you go on and just say like the way that the tailor defeats this man is by just kind of cutting through his clothes and like beating him that way, or finishing the story that way. And so the kid is like, oh my god, that's a great idea. So Juan starts writing, and then he's like, oh man, like, you know what, if I like say everything word for word what you just said, then like I'm just gonna be up all night just trying to crank out this story. And The mother is like, oh, no, no, just go on to bed. So he does so. So Juan ends up at one point going on to go out to his scaffolding. Like, so he goes out the window, goes out to the scaffolding, and there ends up being this hooded man that ends up coming from behind and goes on into this window. And so Juan ends up just kind of seeing this entity off in the distance, and then he goes back to his home. So, come to find out, uh, the hooded man, or in this case, the hollow face, is to go on and attack his mother, and then go on and attack him, and eventually this is where like the story transitions into John's story that leads into Mia here. So John is this construction worker. He's working on this building, and John and his coworker are talking about having an affair, and this guy's asking John, it's like, well, hey, like, would you ever go on and cheat with your wife? Like, come on, I know you're tempted. And John looks at him and he's like, never. Like, no. Like, why would I bother? Like, what would be the most enticing thing? Like, I'm getting who to who. I'm getting it every night. Like, what do I need to go anywhere else? Like, and then we ultimately see that yeah, John is getting it with his wife anyways. I believe her name is Susanna. We immediately see that like his wife is just like bearing it all at some point early on in this film. So there's a little bit of skin in this movie for those of you that of course like to just watch that kind of film, because it seems that I always get those kinds of people that whatever. Moving on. So eventually there's probably a whole thing that kind of covers that at some point or whatever. Um, but eventually it'd probably be there for a very limited time. But who knows? Being very vague here. So John makes his way home to a birthday party, and so John is to even at his break time call his daughter, and eventually ends up talking to his wife. So John makes his way home to this birthday party, and he ends up giving his daughter this big gift, and come to find out that it is an antique teddy bear. And Mia ends up looking at the teddy bear, and she's like, "Oh, okay, thanks, Dad." It's like, plop, because immediately her mother ends up giving her this other gift that all the kids are just looking at, like, "Ooh ah, look at this, ah ooh ah." And so John ends up picking back up the teddy bear. It's like, well, yeah, it's an antique teddy bear. And Mia's like, oh yeah, that's great, Dad. So they do the birthday, and like John again is like making jokes about like, well, how old are you this year? Like, what is even your name when they sing happy birthday? So uh but John is just trying to be funny. He's just trying to deliver dad jokes. And so we there's probably going to be a lot of times that I'm going to get perfectly confused where all these things transition in, but more than likely, what I should have gone on and done and just told like the whole story of one character, which is Juan, and then just done the whole entire story of Mia because it's a lot easier. So, and then also probably realized that I'd already forgotten a bit of this story. So, Mia had gone on and had to have followed this cat, and she follows this cat up this tree, and she ends up pulling this little box out of this tree for some unusual reason, because she sees this hole, and so she grabs out of it and she loses her bracelet within the tree. So Mia goes on and is to pull out this story and starts to read everything that she can out of it and tries to put a whole new piece of paper and write this story out, and then ends up learning about the hollow face. So Mia eventually ends up going on to read this story to her own class, and the teacher is like, well, that's all you got so far? And Mia's like, well, yeah, that's all I got in this story. And so the teacher's like, well, yeah, you should probably try to go on and try to finish it. Like, it seems like you've got the attention of the rest of your students. So, like, yeah, like, it seems like this is an engaging story. So, Mia goes home with their story, and the more and more she is to be so focused on, like, homework or any other thing, like, she is still to go on and just be enamored with this story. And then also just kind of be looking, like, behind her to eventually like be looking at her closet because she feel that there's just something there that's grabbing at her and trying to get her. So this eventually leads to then Mia going on and seeking out her father, and this is still on her birthday. And so Mia is to just feel a little bit uneasy and goes to her parents' room, and that's when she sees that her parents are basically naked. And so John comes out there, is like, hey, what's wrong, birthday girl? Like, how can I help you? And so Mia's just like, yeah. So the two of them eventually go on to this shed, and they pull out this old book about nightmares. And so John starts to read this to Mia, I guess knowing that she has probably read this book who knows how many times. And then also, this book is very simple and very childish. And so John then goes on and is to make a possible dummy of a man in a hood and shoes and a basketball for a head, and then puts a bunch of lighter fluid all over it and lights it on fire. And like, at first it seems to be comforting the both of them, but then Mia, the further and further she looks at this thing, the more and more she pulls away and is to just get closer and closer to the behind of her father. So none of that is gonna work. None of that seems to work. So back with Juan. So Juan again is to be seeking comfort of his mother, and his mother is to go on and tell him, it's like, well, hey, just count to five and and this and that. So eventually, like, this over and over again just like has this kid have this problem, these night terrors, this whatever. And so finally, Juan's mother eventually goes on to seek out this priest. And so the mother ends up seeking out this priest, Antonio. And so this priest is just thinking that this woman just wants confession. So he's like, okay, just confess your sins. And, like, I'm sure whatever you're dealing with is not that bad. And so Louisa is just like, ugh, yeah. And then she walks away and runs off. So Antonio, wanting to take a specific interest in this girl, like, starts to, like, see her around town, and is to notice that everywhere that Louisa and the Swan goes, there seems to be nearby, like, a guy in a hood. And so Anton is like, okay, like, why are they seemingly both running away from a character looking at this? So, like, we realize that, yes, Juan seems to be mainly dealing with this, but there's a possibility also that in some ways the mother is dealing with this too, but not as severity as the son is. Um, but that is to also be very similar to Mia and John in the other half of the story. So eventually, Anton is to seek out another priest to see if there's something that they can do, and the priest is just like, dude, there's nothing I can do. Like, what do you ask me to do? Like, this isn't an exorcism. Like, there's not much I can do past that. And so the priest ends up telling Anton, it's like, this person doesn't need a priest, they need a therapist. So let me transition back to the Mia story. So Mia goes on and she's continually like trying to figure out this story, trying to put the pieces together. And so at a certain point on, we have Mia that has her father again comfort her at night. And so John and Mia are in the same room together. And all of a sudden, then John is noticing something in the closet. So John ends up pulling the light on, and all of a sudden, the light breaks. And so he's like, okay, this seems a little weird. So eventually, the further and further this stuff starts to happen. So John continues to seek out Mia and in her room to where finally the hollow face does come out of the closet and face off against John. Them duking it out, and of course, the hollow face overpowering John and then running off to where John is then running after it, barefooted, running into dark alleys and trying to figure out where this thing had possibly gone and tracked it down, but he can't find it because it disappears, leaving Mia with her mother. And so afterwards, John ends up deciding, like, well, like, I'm going to put together an alarm system to protect my family. And they end up also calling the cops. They fill out a report. And of course, there isn't much of a report to really write out because really there is to be absolutely no description of this guy because it was dark and he is just covered head to toe. Like, there's no specific features of this character that you can immediately point out besides him probably just being tall. So John eventually goes on to install this alarm system that has this big, huge, loud alarm going off. And eventually, it also is to have this camera feed where eventually people can go on and get into and see what this camera feed is to go on and look like. So, again, there is to be yet another night where Mia is to now be attacked by uh, the Hollow Face. I want to say Hollow Man so badly because, of course, I remember that Kevin Bacon movie, and it's so easy just to say the word Hollow Man because it makes so much more sense than Hollow Face does. But that's the actual name of the character, and so and also, like, the whole crux of Hollowface is he wants to steal someone's face because he's looking for a face that is to be similar to his. And there's the whole thing that this person had gone away for so long and been in such a dark place that he had lost his face. So when he is to have gone on and been freed, he is looking for someone similar to his face. And there's a whole reason for that, which eventually ends up playing out by the end. So this hollow face goes on and attacks Mia and is to grab onto her, and John is to again come to the rescue, punching out this character and going and kind of flinging him off his daughter and then trying to chase after this thing again. So by this time also, John is to at his work be dealing with a accident because it seems that his coworker is to unlatch himself from uh, this tie that he was on so that way he could grab these screws. And so what ends up happening is that this guy is on this beam. He's dangling upon this beam because he's trying to get to these screws, and he slips, and now he's like hanging onto this beam. He's slipping, and so John is the only one there that can rush quick enough to get to him and grab onto him and hold on to him. And so John is looking at his coworker, and all of a sudden, this face of this coworker is completely gone. So John is to have dealt with this traumatic event that is to coincidentally trigger into his past, we find out. So, and if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I mean, because you've seen this movie already, and you're going to full on spoilers, like, man, you're just really like building this up when I've already seen this movie, and you're not going to tell me the big old spoilers of it all. Or maybe I already have because I don't remember because I've just been talking blah 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 and like forgetting everything that I've already said already. That is a possibility. So John goes on to realize when forced with a camera footage thing that is to be thrown in his face that the entity that he thought was real was of course not real. So and isn't shown on the camera footage. So the therapist who is going on and speaking to Mia, who cannot speak, she's writing everything out, and Mia is afraid of that everything that she is to write is to turn real. And so the therapist to go on and talk with the parents, but then also is to look at this camera feed and just be like, okay, John, like, you're fighting something that isn't really there. So, like, you're obviously going through some traumatic event, and, like, you really have to just kind of work through this. And so, like, can we help? So John is like, so you guys are just thinking I'm crazy. So John is turning to his own wife and he's thinking like, dude, I think I'm gonna leave you. I think I'm gonna get my stuff and I'm gonna leave because you're just thinking I'm crazy at this point. And so John goes back home and it seems like he's gathering his stuff, but really he just goes into the closet and both his wife and daughter come home and Mia ends up writing a note that says "Leave me alone," and puts it in the closet for the monster. So John goes on to then try and read the note, and then he goes on and goes about his day. So John leaves, and so what ends up happening by the tail end of this story, I'll have to go on and I'll have to like kind of hold up here because now I think we need to go on and have John figure something out on his own. So, because we have Anton who is to be told by Juan about Hollowface, and Anton is asking Elizabeth, like, who is Hollowface? And is to try to go on and bring Juan to this church and try to go on and give him these passages of Bible talk, hoping that this will somehow be some kind of weird placebo that will have this kid go on and no longer be afraid of this monstrous being, which it doesn't. Because recently, what ends up just happening is that both the mother and both the kid are still seeing this hooded individual in the background of this church, and Antonio is like, well, what were you guys looking at? I don't see a thing. So eventually forcing Louisa and Juan to like, hey, you know what? Like, we need to leave town. We need to get out of here. Like, I think the only real answer at this point is just to move, because like, really, we're gonna get no answers here. So John, not Juan, John ends up making his way to his old home, to his mom and dad's place, and goes on to go to this tree and climb up it to then find his daughter's bracelet. And he's like, aha, like she found this thing in this tree. And we come to find that Juan had put that note in that tree. So John then goes on to find his mother, and John ends up speaking the language of Juan and Louisa. So we come to find that John was Juan all along, and John is now telling his mother that Mia is going through the same affliction that he did, and John needs to figure out the answer for his daughter to finish this story. So John's mother gets ever so close to John, hugs him, and is to whisper sweet nothings into John's ear. So then John makes his way back home to Mia, realizing he has an answer for her. So Mia's going on and struggling like a mother because she is going on and living in some possible dream world where she is to have her entire room grow into these branches and vines that are to surround her and surround her bed, to where now she is stuck within this bed to have this forged this hollow faced man forge his way closer. I had to figure out a way to how to fit that forged word. Forcing his way closer to Mia and scaring her more and more. So Mia's mother is to run to her daughter's evade because she's like flinging all over the bed, and like, so the mother ends injecting this girl with this thing, but it's not helping. So John ends up coming to the house conveniently at this same miraculous time, and the mother ends up like quickly opening the door. It's like, hey, like, you help our daughter because I got nothing. So John rushes in there and starts to talk to Mia, and this seems to be a way of calming her down. So the mother's like, keep doing what you're doing, keep talking to her, because evidently this is comforting her. So John is to tell Mia, like, well, like, you know what? Like, I know your problem. Like, you're trying to finish my story, and like, I know that like I'm to be the only one that is to be able to help you finish this story, so let me help you finish this story. So come to find out, what ended up actually happening is that Juan, the man's face that needed to be revealed, was actually his prisoned father that had been in jail, that had gone to prison, and Louisa, I guess, wanted nothing to do with him, which eventually she found Antonio, and I guess they just fell in love with one another. So, uh, and maybe Antonio had gone on to leave the priesthood behind, I guess, because he just fell in love with this woman. And so John here has to play out the rest of the story. So what had happened is that Juan was to have gone on and faced off against uh, the hollowed face, and had been out on to the balcony and and had faced off against his father. And what happened was is that this father fell over and was dangling on the side of this just kind of balcony like thing. And so Juan ended up watching his father fall to his death and fall into this concrete and sank and died. And so eventually it is to be revealed who the actual Hollow Man is to actually be. And really, like, the way that John explains this story to Mia, like, it doesn't really seem like he actually finishes the story. Like, it just feels that, like, he just goes on and whispers these things here and there for her, but it doesn't actually seem to actually, in my mind, seem like he definitively finishes the story. But, like, he's whispering these sweet nothings to her, so we don't know exactly word for word how he's finishing the story. Um, but he goes on and then does so, and then she seemingly wakes up from this, and then they're all fine because, like, okay, all right, like, we've beaten this thing this day. And so yeah, so there's no like need for them to go on and like be frightened by this thing anymore. But here's the weird thing. So Mia and the mother like are all hugging and they're happy, and like John just kind of continues to like look at the closet. And you would think probably after that like John and his family, it's like, dude, we're moving from this house. Like, I'm just gonna be remembered like that my daughter had just gone through this problem and been scared of this closet. And so like maybe they end up moving after that. But logically, if this John guy is to be this construction worker, then like maybe he's making good money to just like, dude, we're gonna move. uh but anyways, that's how they wrap up the story in my mind. I know there might have been some beats and things here. I just kind of really rushed through this and kind of vaguely put it all together. So, but hey guys, also, this is probably the more quickest review that I've ever gone on and done because I left out a shitload of details. Uh, but with that said, also, like, it's a review. I bet people are looking at this review in like 38 minutes. Like he's so known for doing these like 3 hour long drags or 2 hour long things. Like, man, he wrapped this up in less than an hour. I'm shocked. But yeah, that's what happens finally when I don't go on and take any notes. Or reasonably, there is just an easygoing movie to follow instead of huge amount of like characters and names and places and weapons and all these details that I have to go on and memorize, and then eventually these transitional things that go on from place to place to place and cut to cut to cut, like. And so with that said, I am gonna just get out of here for once, to just be in relief that I can now just enjoy the rest of my day. um, but anyways, I hope that you've gone on to enjoy this review, as well as also enjoy the rest of your day also, because you won't have a whole video to watch of me talking for once, if you decided to watch this video or not. But either way, uh, this is fun. I enjoy doing these reviews, even though reasonably, uh, I'm just looking at a review, just going or review, and just going like, man, I hope this is the right gamble this day. And then I'm just kind of watching like the day to day. Like, nope. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Let's just push on and try to do something easier because I know I'm gonna eventually go on and do something hard. So that's it. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.